and welcome back to module number 10. And in this module we are going to learn how to use PHP to insert data to MySQL. Before I will start, I want to go over the last module, module number 9, and explain how to insert or to create a table, how to see the table in real life, and then make sure that we are coherent with regard to what this table consists of and how to apply later on, as you can see in this module, how to test the connection between your PHP and your table, how to insert data to your table, and how to employ or test and see if it works. So everything laid out for you in this module. I'm going to talk a little bit more in the video than actually lay out on the page, because this is a little bit more, I will be able to show a little more tricks. So let's start. The issue that I want you to remember that before you log on to the cPanel, you have the information about your account. Example, the main domain, the IP address, the password. Please remember the password, because this is something that you will encounter later on when you're going to write a script from PHP to communicate with the database. So this is something that you need to remember, even though there's similarity. Example, MySQL username is similar to the account details or username, but those things are important, and I want you to remember that. When you click on hide or show, it will show you the password which you will encounter. So now we are talking about the database, and we are going to start with the database, creating a new database. We're going to create database, and this is the interface. I already created one new database and I called it 1. When you're going to create a new database, example 2, it will create a new table. This is the name of the table, but the full name of the table is EPIZ_255/201. So he will create for you this database. I was logged out because I did not wait enough to, and create. And here it is. So now you have 1 or 2. If I will go to administrator, I will be able to create the name of the database. I will use the same name, otherwise it will get into trouble. Now it's you to think, what do you want to have in your table? How many rows or columns do you need to have? In my example that I display in my assignment, in my notes, I created an HTML that asks for first name, last name, and email. Basically 3 things. So in this case, when I open up, I will say 3 and I will say go. So now I can have first name, last name, and email. One of the recommendation is that you need to decide the length of the form or the table that will allow a person with a first name. Usually we are giving 15 characters in order for it to display his or her name. The same goes to the password, to the spelling mistake, sorry, last name, and email the same thing. So I try to be consistent. It doesn't really matter, but this is something that you will need to consider. I'm not going to talk about correlation. I'm going to say the most impressive is that you need to decide is it going to have a null index? I would say leave it alone as it is. So the issue is, this is the attributes, and you're going to create for my online form and save. So you basically created MySQL table that can be converted into SQL, and this is quite nice. Now you can, example, write a query. If you are familiar with SQL, you can write a query using this query into the application. I am not interested in the issue of a query or not a query, but I will show you how can you add more data into your table. So the first name is, I'm going to add, is my wife, Colleen. Her last name is Parker, and her email is cc@cc.com. Okay, so now what we have, because of our structure, we said we have to be compiled to the structure itself. Hold on, I'm getting lost here. I'm going to change the structure. Why? Because I need to have more space, and I'm going to change the attributes. Hold on. Okay, so I'm going to call it, that's it, my mistake. I did not call it the right name. It should have been done with, and I will show you again with regard to, it's not an integer, it is a vector, and that allows me to save more data and be able to change it. So this was purposely, but the idea was that you will have some sense how this works. So when I will insert, example, as I said, my wife name and her email, and I will say go, he will successfully admit that. I can also add my cat names. My cat names is Mutzi, and her last name is Friedman, and her email is mutzi@ff.com. And again, this is something that will be show and be able to do search. I'll be able to insert that. I'll be able to export it. Example, I can export it as SQL. I can export it as PHP array. So all those things is important because this is the structure that you're going to work with your database, and you need to be familiar with that. So now the issue is, what can I do and how to operate that? So in this case, it's called to, and this is what it will consist of. I'm going back to my presentation. Oh, one more thing that is important. One of the things that it is important to remember, as I showed you before, is that this is where your account will look like. You looked at the FTP, Now you're going to look at MySQL, and you can display this information here and how it's going to be displayed. So view create, I can show that, I can see it, and this is what it will consist of. So again, the way for us to display it and ability to apply. So two things that need to be in order. We created our first table, and we created that in a sense that what each one of them consists of. Now the issue is, how do we connect and make sure that the PHP or the website will be able to connect to it? So there are two things that we have to remember. One of the things that PHP can connect to MySQL, you have to know your username and password, as I said before, but there's two methodologies that entail in the connection. The first one is called MySQL Lite, which is with I in the end, and PDO. PDO will work with 12 different data system, where MySQL I is working with only MySQL. That's why I like it. It works with that. So one of the things that I want you to remember, do not try to install the MySQL I into the server, because we are free users. The company will not allow us to do that. So it is something that you don't need to install. It's already embedded into the system. So how do we measure the connection? So the script is quite simple and quite straightforward. You have to know the name of the server name, your username and password, and you're going to repeat it again by the command of $com. And then you're going to say MySQL I, and you're going to open quotation with the $server name / username / password, and it will check to see if it is connecting. I want you to remember that in this case, the server address is SQL 109.pz.com. This is our address. And if you are running it on a local server, it will be different. You will say local server or local host. But in our case, it will be the address that the website provides us as outlined here. So this is important for us to remember. Then the username and password. Remember, the password is hidden. You have to unclick it in order for you to show it, and this is it. So this is what it will apply to. This is part one. Part two is to insert data. I created in HTML and I cover it with black. So you will see that in my table 1, I created first name, last name, and email and submitted. How do I insert it in order for my server to connect and to connect to MySQL? I'm going to apply the action as insert.php, and the method that I used was post. So the insert basically is the idea that I need to connect to my database, and this is how the insert.php will look like. The start of PHP, the username, the server name, the username, the password, the connection, and then I'm going to ask $SQL insert into my guest, and I will say not guest but my students or my friends or my family, and I will say first name, last name, email, and for example, I will give it a value, John, Joe, John at example.com. If it's true, you will receive confirmation. If not, there will be an error. I want you to remember, this is going to be painful. If you did not suffer so far, it's going to suffer more. So the issue that you're going to encounter again and again is connection failed, connection time out, which means that in this process, in this code, there is a mistake. I want you, before you run and ask me questions, make sure that the address and everything else is correct, and everything that you gave is correct. Otherwise, you will get this message, and this is probably going to hurt you, but overall, it will find things that you need to be aware and be assertive in order for you to find the solution. So that's it for module number 10. I know I did not talk a lot. I just gave you an overview of the table, the structure. I did not talk about what is a table. I hope by now that most of you know what is a table is. I showed you what is MySQL. I showed you how to create a table, how to name the table, and then how to collect all the information about the table name and the server name and username and password in order for you to insert that into your PHP script and able to run it. So this is it. I hope you enjoyed that. There is no assignment in this module. Yay! But I want you to try it. I want to see if you are successful and if it works for you. That's it for now. I hope you enjoy it. Until next time, have fun.